Bryce Young threw for 448 yards. So this season, that's the number 4 most passing yards by a quarterback this season. Welcome to Just the Stats NFL Top 10's for Monday. Big Monday it was. A lot of good games, a lot of games between top teams, and they were close games, most of them. So that was pretty impressive, fun to watch. As a Jaguar fan, I was shocked and pleased at the results of their game, which we might get to today. So today we are going to talk about the games on Sunday. We'll start with the early games and work our way through, and we'll see how far we get in the next 25 to 30 minutes, probably more like 30 minutes, and then we'll go on from there. So this week, I'm including the top 10's games stats. So what I mean by that is if a player had a stat in this particular game, which there was a few, that was good enough to be one of the best games of the season, I'm including it. And I'll mention it. And there were a few of those games like that where a player had a really good performance that put him into the top 10 for this season. And in fact, we even had one player, which we'll get to, who set an NFL record for most completions in a single game, Jacoby Brissett. We'll talk about that more likely tomorrow. But I'm going to do that right into the thing. So you'll see if you watch this on a podcast, on a YouTube video, you'll see the top 10 listings. I'm just going to mention, like I always do, whatever place the person came in and then maybe who was around him and so forth like that. But I'm not going to go rattling off every top 10 player. But I'm going to include that in as well as any top 10s they made for their team or the NFL as they move up on their career-wise numbers. Later on, we'll look at some season stats. So we'll go through each game this way. Now, some games, like this very first one, the Washington Commanders versus the Miami Dolphins, very close game. Miami Dolphins were able to pull it out. They won the game 16-13. They are now 4-7. After that huge upset over the Dolphins, they come back and beat the Commanders. The Commanders are out of it now. They're 3-8. I mean, they were supposed to be the challenger for the Eagles, and they just aren't doing it. And primarily because they just can't keep the quarterback on the field. And McLaurin has not been on the field most of the year. It's just been a very disappointing year. It's almost like they just about have to regroup and come back next year and see how they can do. Now, in this game, the Commanders did outgain the Miami Dolphins 379 to 311 yards. But that was about it. They just couldn't score when they needed to score. Looking at, let's look at this. Usually this is one of the telling things. Actually, the Commanders, interesting that they couldn't win this game. I mean, they held the ball for longer. They converted almost 50%, 46% of their third down conversions versus Miami only doing 3 of 9 for 33%. But they just could not pull it out. Now, big difference here in this game was Mariota threw the interception. That was huge. And it really did end up costing them. This game went into overtime. In fact, so it was 16-13 after overtime, where the Dolphins were able to win the game on a field goal in overtime. But not much in this game to talk about, really. Quarterbacks, nobody stood out. Like I said, Tagovailoa did all right. He only threw for 171 yards, 14 for 20 for 171 yards, 96 quarterback rating. This was a very slow game. I mean, the only standout player here was Devon Achane, who had 21 carries for 120 yards. Now, no touchdowns there, but that's excellent. And then he also led the team in receptions, 5 for 45. So he had a really good game, totaling out to 165 total yards in this game. He did have, no, he didn't, no touchdowns for him either, either as receiving or running, but still a good game. Now for the Commanders, it was Deebo Samuels led the team with receptions, 7 for 74 yards, and a touchdown in that was included in that. And he did have one rush as well, but only for 3 yards. But really, nobody stood out. All right, so that's enough of that game because it really, like I said, there's just not much to do. There's no top 10s, nothing like that. So let's move on to the Carolina Panthers and the Atlanta Falcons. Now, this one was such an important game, and it's even more meaningful now that the Buccaneers lost their game to the Bills. But the Carolina Panthers win this game also in overtime, 30-27 over the Atlanta Falcons. And the Falcons really needed to win this game to have any opportunity to make the playoffs, but they're pretty much out of it. They're 3-7. I mean, they'd have to go, basically win out the rest of the season even to have a chance, and that's not going to happen. But this was a very close game most of the game. Atlanta led at halftime 21-10, and they seemed to have a handle on it. But then in the third quarter, the Carolina Panthers came back to make it close. And then in the fourth quarter, they were able to score a touchdown and a 2-point conversion to end up winning the game in overtime with a field goal in overtime, winning 30-27. And it was a critical error in that game in overtime that gave Carolina Panthers the opportunity to kick a field goal and win it. But Carolina Panthers really racked up a lot of yards, 486 yards, and this was a huge game for Bryce Young. I've never seen him have a game like this. Very impressive play on his part. 31 completions on 45 attempts for 448 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He had a quarterback rating of 123.2. I believe this might be the best game I've ever seen him play. And in this game, he got banged up too, but he kept on going, and they pulled this game out in overtime to win it. Pretty impressive. Now, Penix got knocked out of the game, and I don't know how badly he's hurt yet. Kirk Cousins had to come in. He just did a mediocre job. Not even mediocre. He was pretty bad. Penix was doing okay. He was 13 for 16 for 175 yards. So he had a quarterback rating of 112. But then he got hurt. Cousins came in, went 6 for 14 for 48 yards, 52 quarterback rating. And that's basically what happened. The Falcons were trying to win with a backup quarterback, and they couldn't do it. And Bryce Young played such a game. I mean, the Falcons have had a pretty good defense. But it was Bryce Young in this game. Bryce Young throwing to Tedero McMillan, who had 8 catches for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. Huge game for him. This rookie's been a standout. Now for the Falcons, it was Bijan Robinson, 23 carries for 104 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then he also threw in 4 catches for 39 yards. So big game for him. And Drake London had 7 catches for 119 yards. So those two, their 2-star players, tried to keep the game close, and they did, but they couldn't pull out the win. Now in this game for the Carolina Panthers, Dave Canales, with this win, now has 11 wins for the Carolina Panthers and ties Matt Rua, who was the coach from 2020 to 2022 with 11 wins. So they both have 11 wins. Next up for Dave Canales is George Seifert, who is a great coach for the San Francisco 49ers, but he also coached the Panthers for a couple of years. He has 16 wins, so 5 more wins, and I'm sure the Carolina Panthers would love to get all 5 of those this season. If they do that, he's coach of the year. I mean, already I think he's a candidate because this is a team no one expected to have a winning record and be in contention to win the division. Now, like I said, in this game, Bryce Young threw for 448 yards. So this season, that's the number 4 most passing yards by a quarterback this season. Just so happens that one of the other ones was Jacoby Brissett, who came in at number 2. We'll talk about him. Beat Bryce Young by 4 yards. But yeah, Bryce Young, 448 yards. Now, some of it was in overtime, but still counts. Big game for him. Like I said, he usually averages somewhere around the 200-yard mark. So I really am happy for him because, there's a lot of questions about is he the quarterback for the Panthers or not? And he really showed a lot of toughness and a lot of gut there to play in that game. I'm not even, particularly a Panther fan, but I was, just happy for his play this Sunday. Now, also in this game for Atlanta, in a losing effort, unfortunately for the Falcon fans and the Falcons, Bijan Robinson had 2 rushing touchdowns. He only needed 1 to pass Michael Vick to move into 9th place all time in rushing touchdowns for the Atlanta Falcons. So Bijan Robinson now has 22 rushing touchdowns to pass Michael Vick. Next up for him is Haskell Stanback, who had 25. He played in the 70s, late 70s. He had 25 rushing touchdowns. That's next up for Bijan Robinson. All right, that's a look at that game. Now, let's move on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Buffalo Bills. Now, in this game, this was a back and forth game for a little while, but the Bills ended up pulling it out in the second quarter, in the second half, and especially in the fourth quarter, really put the game away. There was no top 10. Well, we will when we get to Allen, but for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, there weren't any top 10 numbers this particular game. But in this game, Tampa Bay Buccaneers had 367 total yards. The Buffalo Bills had 414. This is another game where the Bills won because of Josh Allen. Baker Mayfield did not have a good game. It's been another bad game. 16 completions on 28 attempts for 173 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Just not good. Now, Josh Allen, on the other hand, only 3 more completions, but 19 completions on 30 attempts, but 317 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did throw 2 interceptions. One of them was ugly. Just crazy trying to get rid of the ball. He was going to be sacked in the end zone for a safety. He just kind of tossed it out there. It was intercepted. He had a quarterback rating, though, of 104. Now, for the Buccaneers, they did a lot of running in this game. Had over 200 yards of rushing. And that's what really kept him in this game. Sean Tucker had 19 carries for 106 yards, 2 touchdowns. Rashad White had been leading the team in rushing while Bucky Irving's been out, but he had 10 carries for 51 yards in this game, and then Baker Mayfield had 39 yards. Now, Josh Allen had only 40 yards. He had 6 carries for 40 yards, but he had 3 rushing touchdowns. These numbers really hurt James Cook. James Cook had 16 carries, 48 yards. That's only 3 yards a carry. This is really going to drop him down. Not that there were any outstanding rushing yards. And actually, when I think about it, Jonathan Taylor, who is number 1 while Cook is number 2, he didn't even play. So they'll have the same amount of games now after this game for the Buffalo Bills. But no standout receivers. I mean, Emeka Egbuka for Tampa Bay had 5 catches for 40 yards. That's it. They are really missing some of their wide receivers. Cade Otton, who a lot of people had hoped as the tight end could get some receptions, only had 2 for 28. They just couldn't get a passing game going, really. They really need, Godwin and Evans back. It just rounds out their team, and Bucky Irving out of the backfield. They're missing all those players. Those are 3 of their star offensive players. They need them back. And the same for Buffalo. I mean, Tyrell Shavers had 4 catches for 90 yards and a touchdown, but no one had more than 4 catches. This was all Josh Allen. And honestly, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, did they not watch the game before with Miami? They let Josh Allen get out of the backfield too many times. It's just unbelievable. He had 6 carries for 40 yards. But it was an interesting game that the way they could not stop Josh Allen in this game. I'm looking at it. Yeah. Tampa Bay, and again, they lost this game, and they did lose it. They had bad mistakes at the wrong time. But in this game, they held the ball for over 35 minutes and kept Buffalo to less than 25. And yet, with 25 minutes of having the ball, the Buffalo Bills scored 44 points. So that's not good. Now, looking at Josh Allen in particular, in this game, he scored 18 points with those 3 rushing touchdowns. For the Buffalo Bills, that moves him up into 7th place all-time in points scored for the Buffalo Bills. He had 452. He got 18. He's got 470 points that he scored for the Buffalo Bills. That passed Dan Carpenter, who played from 2013 to 2016. He had 464. So now with 470 points, the next player up for Josh Allen is Thurman Thomas, running back in the 80s and through the 90s. He had 522 points. So it'll be a while before he catches him. And Andre Reed also played basically the same time period with Thurman Thomas. That's when they had those great Buffalo Bills teams that went to the Super Bowl but could not quite win a Super Bowl. They both ended up with 522 points, so he can knock off 2 players with 1 shot. Whether he gets there this season or not, I don't know. Now, also, with those 3, not only did he have 3 rushing touchdowns, he had 3 passing touchdowns. What a game, huh? Like I said, it was all Josh Allen in this game pretty much. But he had 3 rushing touchdowns, which ties him for the lead this season in the NFL. There's 7 times a player has had 3 rushing touchdowns in a single game. Now, 4 of those have been by Jonathan Taylor. But Josh Allen joins that group of players. All right, let's move on to the next game, and that is let me get this right. The Houston Texans versus the Tennessee Titans, because it was in Tennessee, this game. And looking it up right here. And this was a game very close, which was a little surprising considering the Tennessee Titans had only won 1 game. Houston Texans were able to pull it out 16-13. Man, this game was kind of slow. I mean, first touchdown wasn't scored until the 3rd quarter. At halftime, it was 3-0. Tennessee was winning. And then Houston came alive in the 3rd quarter a little bit and scored a touchdown and ended up winning the game. A lot of field goals in this game, but 3 by Houston and 2 by Tennessee. So despite the fact that Houston did have 315 yards to 229 for Tennessee, but Tennessee just doesn't have the firepower. And this was a backup against a rookie in this game. Both of them played, average. Nothing outstanding, but nothing terrible either. Cameron Ward held his sack total down a little bit. He only was sacked 3 times. Davis Mills, 26 for 41 for 274 yards and a touchdown, no interceptions. And Cameron Ward was 24 for 37 for 194, 1 touchdown. Now, neither one gets the ball down the field too far. As far as rushing goes, nobody was impressive in this game. There was a lot of hope for Marks, but he only had 18 carries. He had 18 carries, which is plenty of carries, but only 44 yards. But Nick Chubb didn't do anything either to Mills. Now, Nico Collins did have a good game, 9 catches, 92 yards, and 1 touchdown. So a lot of catches to get to 92 yards, but he did have that touchdown too. And for Tennessee, there was nobody that stood out. Nobody had anything really impressive at all. I mean, TJ Spears, the running back, had 5 catches for 31 yards. That led in receptions and yards, 31. Well, no, Okonkwo had 56 yards, but only on 3 catches. Nothing impressive in this game. For the Texans, Their defense has been so impressive, and Will Anderson's been awesome. I mean, he's only been with the team since 2023. He had 2 tackles for loss. He now has 38 to tie him with Antonio Smith for 7th place all time in Houston Texans history in tackles for loss. So he's tied for 7th with 38. Next up is Brian Cushing, who had 42. So only 4 behind him. He's very possibly going to be able to easily make it to number 5 and be next year, I'm positive, before he can even get to into the top 4. But he's done in 3 years what it took Antonio Smith and Brian Cushing. Well, Antonio Smith is who he just tied. Took him 7 years. Will Anderson was able to do it in 3. So that shows you he's been so good on that team. All right, let's move on to our next game. This was another game that was very close. The Chicago Bears and the Minnesota Vikings. This was a big game for Minnesota. Needed a win, and they could not pull out the win. I mean, they tried to come back in the 4th quarter, which has been their way of doing it, and it's just they came up short. I mean, it was 10-3 at halftime. The Bears were winning. No scoring, no touchdowns for the Minnesota Vikings until the 4th quarter. I mean, by the 4th quarter, it was 17-3, and 16-3. And Chicago gets a field goal, but Minnesota comes back to lose the game 19-17. It's a rookie court. Well, he's not a true rookie, but it's his rookie season, and he did not look that impressive in this game. He needs a little bit of work still. Now, Caleb Williams wasn't impressive either, but not quite as bad. He was 16 for 32, only 50% passing. That's not good. 193 yards, not good really either. Only had a quarterback rating of 68.9. But J.J. McCarthy, same amount of completions and attempts, 16 for 32, but only 150 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, 47.7 quarterback rating. So the quarterbacks were not impressive in the game at all. Now, DeAndre Swift, I like the way Kyle McGonaghy had looked when Swift is out, but Swift came right back. When he got back on the field, he's been the guy. He had 21 carries for 90 yards in this game. Now, Kyle Monange had 12 carries for 23 yards. But he did have a touchdown, which is kind of irritating if you have Swift on your fantasy team, that he's getting the ball quite a bit, but when they get near the end zone, they're giving it to Kyle Monange. And so he only had 23 yards on 12 carries. That's not even 2 yards a carry, but he did have 1 touchdown. Now for Minnesota, Aaron Jones, 16 carries for 70 yards to lead the team there. And again, this is the same thing. If you have Aaron Jones in fantasy, you don't like this either. Jordan Mason, 6 carries for 45 yards and a touchdown. So they're putting him in, even though he did score his own touchdown from 16 yards out. I guess you can't call that bringing him in really near the goal line because he scored from 16 yards out. As far as receiving, nobody impressive for Chicago or Minnesota. And Addison, this is a game Minnesota might have won if Addison catches a good pass right down the middle. He probably runs it in for a touchdown, but Addison dropped it. It was a deep pass, and he had him. He might have got caught, but he was past the defenders, and it would have been a touchdown. It might have changed the entire complexion. He did have a touchdown anyway. Jordan Addison, 2 catches to only 20 yards, but 1 was a touchdown. He was targeted 7 times. And like I said, 1 of those was a drop pass. All right. Now, there's no top 10s in this game, so we will move on to the next game. This is another important game here. If the Bengals were hoping to have any chance to have any thought of being in the playoffs at all, they needed to win this game, and they could not do it. Not even close, really. I think Flacco's gotten figured out a little bit. The Steelers win this game 34-12. Really dominated pretty much the entire game, and they win it easily. Looking at the numbers, Joe Flacco really did have a bad game. 23 for 40, 199 yards. That's the lowest output he's had this season. 1 touchdown, 1 interception for 68.6. And Pittsburgh defense had looked vulnerable, but not in this game. They played well. I mean, they only got to Flacco 1 time, which you would have really thought Flacco would have more yards than that, especially when they're losing the entire game. Now, in this game, I don't know how badly, but Rodgers is hurt. We'll see how bad. He was 9 for 15 for 116 yards and 1 touchdown. He went out of the game. Rudolph came in. He played well as well. Of course, this is against the Bengals defense, so he was 12 for 16, 127 yards. Now, Chase Brown was impressive. 18 carries for 99 yards. He had looked terrible when Burrow went out. His numbers were just horrible, but they've figured out a way to use him. 18 carries, 99 yards. I think Pittsburgh was set on making sure Flacco did not rack up a ton of passing yards. Jaylen Warren was good. Only had to carry the ball 10 times, but 62 yards. They only ran the ball 28 times. Gainwell had 9, but only 24 yards for him. So Warren's definitely the guy here on this team. Now, Chase Brown led the team with receptions. This has been a bad game for Jamar Chase. They figured out a way to shut him down. He'd been averaging almost 10 yards a catch. Let me back up there. He'd been averaging about 10 receptions a game, only was held to 3. T. Higgins also had 3 for 63 yards, but he did have a touchdown as well. No touchdowns for Chase. Only 3 catches for 30 yards. Chase Brown led the team with 6 receptions. Big game for him, really. 28 yards there and another 99. So he had 127 yards total. Now, Kenneth Gainwell, this is where Jaylen Warren hasn't been showing up as well. He only had 2 catches for 5 yards, while Gainwell led the team with 7 catches for 81 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wow. Big game for him, honestly. He had way more receiving yards than he did rushing, and he had more receiving yards than anybody on the team, including Metcalf or Darnell Washington. But again, this is a team that does a lot of those dink and dunk type passes. We're looking at it. Yeah. Now in this game, despite losing, Higgins had a touchdown reception, which for him, he needed 1 touchdown to pass TJ Houshmandzadeh. He'd been tied with him with 37 touchdown receptions. He got 1. He now has 38. So he's in 7th place all time by himself for Cincinnati Bengals receiving touchdowns. Next up for him is Eddie Brown, who played from 1985 to 1991. He has 41. And 5th is Jamar Chase with 51. But like I said, not a good game for him today. All right. We're going to call it a wrap after that game, and next game up will be the Chargers-Jaguars. We'll talk about that tomorrow along with the rest of the Sunday games. But we got in some games. These games that are coming up tomorrow on tomorrow's podcast had some big scoring and were pivotal games, but had some NFL records that were set and stuff like that. So that'll be fun to talk about tomorrow, but especially if you're watching it. But like I said, tomorrow we'll catch up with the rest of the games. I appreciate you listening. And please subscribe on YouTube at Just the Stats NFL. You can find this podcast there, video or audio. You can also find this podcast, Just the Stats NFL, on not Facebook, but I do have a Facebook site. But on Apple, Spotify, you can also contact me at justthestatsnfl@gmail.com if you have a question, comment. Appreciate anybody who chimes in any way like that. The comments that I do get, I like, and I try to respond back if I can. Also, so like I said, I appreciate you listening, and I hope you enjoy the Monday night game tonight, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. So that is a wrap for NFL Top 10's for Monday. I'm out.